You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm Maureen. You'll notice I am one short of a hosting partner today. Janice is not with me today. In our effort to get you 2 episodes per week, we had to do some with just me, just for the sake of scheduling and for what's going on in our respective lives. And football season is here, so our scheduling has gotten a little bit trickier in the midst of that. So today, because I don't have my partner in crime with me, there was not a lot of things I wanted to discuss without Janice. So today we're going over your YouTube comments. You guys like when we do those videos, and I have not had the time to go through and respond to all of these, what with my daughter in sports and school season kicking off. So we're going to address some of the comments that we've had since the last comment video we put out, which was, by the way, last May. So I don't know that we will get through all of these comments, but we'll try to make this an hour-ish long episode, a little under an hour. That's the goal. Under an hour is usually our goal. We just don't always make that. So, and before we really dig into these comments, I just want to remind you of some things that we have going on. We are in the process of switching our podcast platform. Currently, we do it through Podbean, which is a podcasting platform that puts it onto other podcasting platforms. Podcasting hosting is what Podbean is, and it puts it onto other podcast platforms. And we are in the process of switching off of that onto another one. There should not be a lapse in our podcast. There should not be a moment where you are not getting our podcast for whatever reason. It should be going out to all the podcasting platforms, still the same. But we are not sure what differences you will see from switching it over. We're hoping that as we are in the process, we can't cancel Podbean too soon, because then you won't get a podcast at all. So there might be a week or two there where you can find it doubled up on some platforms, or if you search for a podcast, you'll see it going off of 2 different sites possibly. So that will be the only change that you will experience. But bear with us as we go through this technical change in our podcasting here at Sanditon Chronicles, as we make this transition from our podcasting hosting platforms. You will notice that there will no longer be an option to donate to our Patreon accounts through Podbean, which you would find on, I believe, Apple and Spotify. I think those are put out through Podbean. And there are other ones like iHeart, I think, our Buzzsprout that has it's not Patreon, but it's something similar to that. Those will no longer be options to donate to. So if you are seeing that as you are listening to this right now on today's episode that is coming out to you, if you're seeing that and you feel like you want to donate, please do not donate to those. That's going away. I don't even think I think within the week we will be canceling out those accounts. So I know that if you donate today, you might get it, but I don't know where you're listening to this from at this moment and where we'll be at in the transition cutoff. So please do not donate to those. We do have our memberships on YouTube still available, which range from $2.99 a month to $79 a month. And then the third one is $24.99 a month. And the reason for those price jumps is because each one is progressively more work for me. So that's why those are that way. So do not feel like you need to subscribe to those. That's not a requirement to listen to our channel. If you do not subscribe to those, nothing changes for you at all on our YouTube channel or even on our podcasting channel. I am not sure if our new platform, our hosting platform, I'm not sure if they offer donations or not. I don't think they do. So if you wanted to support us in some way, it would be through YouTube, through buying the memberships, or when we do our live to do super chats and things like that. That's an option that'll be turned on during the live streams that we'll have for you. Speaking of live streams, if you are we are having a live at the end of October, which I believe is October 29th, I want to say. Yes, October 29th, which is 2 weeks from today. We are doing a live stream. Now, that is a members only live chat, but that does not mean everyone can't come on. All that means is that it's for our people who have bought memberships at the $2.99 level. They will be the ones able to comment on there. They'll be the ones able to interact with us on there, but everyone can tune in and watch the live. We tested that out in September. So this is our October one. If you do the $2.99 a month, one of the benefits is you get a live podcast with us or a live stream once a month. That's members only chat. So that's coming up in 2 weeks. And coming up into Christmas season, we get kind of overwhelmed here at TSC. We get, especially as I have a family of 5 and we just have 2 new puppies. That's one of the other reasons I haven't been able to be on it, because we got 2 new puppies that we were blessed with. Someone had given us these puppies because they needed to get rid of them, and we took them. And it's been a lot. So Janice and I are going to try to keep on top of our scheduling to make sure we're getting you an episode a week after November or after October. So that is coming at you. We do have a list of things we will be talking about. We will probably take a break from, I'm going to guess, mid-December to mid-January or end of January. We'll be taking a hiatus just for like a winter break like they do on TV shows. We'll be taking that break. And then we will probably be taking a summer break from now on. So that is the general plan going forward with TSC. So with that being said, we're going to go right into our video for today where we are talking comments on our YouTube channel. We don't have any comments on our podcasting host. I don't know how to even check those, but we haven't gotten any comments on our Podbean listing or on our Buzzsprout listing. So the only comments we have to read off are from YouTube. So there's that. Also, one more thing before we get into the comments, we wanted to remind you that this is absolutely free to you. There's no charge. There's no difference to you. But if you could be subscribing to our YouTube channel, it's just by clicking that little bell that's underneath the video and liking our videos. The more people we have subscribed to our YouTube channel and the more likes we get, the more it shows up in searches, the more it shows up on homepages, the more people will see it, the more people watch it, the more willing people are to come on and discuss their roles with us and discuss Sanditon with us or things that they have upcoming. And I'm sure you would like to hear from cast and crew from this show. So make sure you're doing that. Please send it out, share it with your family and friends. And that would be a huge help to our podcast. And that, again, that's free to you. It's no charge there. But let's get into the comments. Now, when I say we are going newest to oldest, that doesn't necessarily mean newest episode to oldest episode. It's the order of the comments came in. This one was posted 4 days ago. So we're going to get right into it. It's from Catherine Begley. She's thanking us for coming on the podcast, and we love that you guys listen to us. Thank you so much for listening and keeping us here and giving us something to excitedly talk about and develop with you guys. It's such a huge blessing to be able to do this. But she said, this is on the episode 91, which is Ralph Starling Spotlight. I hope you guys like that one. I'm not sure how you guys felt about it. I think we were kind of divided on that. But she said, as for my sentiments about Ralph, I think he reflects a typical suitor from a rural town at the time with all the expectations of his partner that a typical suitor might have. I agree with that. I do think he was. I just think that he wasn't right for Charlotte. And I liked Ralph. I didn't think he was right for Charlotte, but I liked Ralph. She said, but Charlotte is not a typical partner, as we would all agree. Yes, I agree. I do agree. She's not your typical demure country girl, which is not how Jane Austen ever wrote a woman. So I agree there. She said, I think she deserves someone atypical. Yes. How lucky our girl was that she met, loved, and was loved by more than one atypical suitor in Colborne and Sydney. Very well put, Catherine. I completely, wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. Absolutely agree with that. Our next comment is from Jay. She is commenting on episode 92, which is Mrs. Wheatley Spotlight. And I'm so sad. There were some things that we did not point out in there. Janice and I were talking after we recorded this that we know we brought up in the first episode that didn't get recorded. And we didn't realize it until after we put this one out. We're like, oh man, we forgot to mention this, but we mentioned it in the first recording. So hopefully you guys were okay with that. She said, I really think Alexander had to dismiss some of the staff at some point to get finances in order after he inherited the estate and kept those who were loyal and kept their mouth shut about the manor. I think that's possible. But I still think as a gentleman, of course he was a homebody and we don't really see him leave the house very much, but still he would have had commitments to tenants on the land, to farming capacities and organizing that. He would have had some responsibilities outside of the house where he would have required housekeepers and he would have required staff. I think he would have had someone for the girls, just because he wouldn't know how to dress them or do any of that. And I don't think he would put all that on Mrs. Wheatley. But I do agree. I think that there's probably a very high chance he did let some of the staff go, especially if his father was what we were given the impression of. She said that you said Charlotte had gumption. That is the trait which I think endears her to Mrs. Wheatley. That is the mutual ground the two women start to feel each other out. I agree. I think that Mrs. Wheatley appreciates anybody who can stand up for themselves, who can stand up to Colborne, who can stand up to people who matter to her in a way that is not wicked or evil or cruel. She goes on to say, don't get me wrong, Mrs. Wheatley may be a housekeeper, but if she suspected or felt like Charlotte was harming, using, or taking advantage of Xander or the girls, she would send Charlotte off. And I agree. I think she would have found a way to get rid of her. And oftentimes when, at least in literary aspects, I don't know about the reality of this. I only know what I've read because obviously I wasn't around in the Regency time period or the Edwardian time period. But I think that housekeepers and butlers were giving a fair amount of authority within the house to protect the family. And those who were elevated because they were trustworthy, because the family could trust them and what they were doing. And again, this is solely coming from what I've seen in movies portraying that time period, from random documentaries here and there that talk about this, and from like authors like Jane Austen, how she writes about housekeepers, things like that. So I think they were given a fair amount of authority, and I think that's perfectly within them. Of course, the head of the house was the authority, and so he could override anything. But I think that if you trust your housekeeper, as Xander did, I think he gave her the run of the house, especially given how she talks with him. He would have let her make any decision without needing to notify him at all. She says she is the closest idea of a mother, since we do not know when or how Alexander and Sam lost their mom. And as a mother figure, she would do anything to protect them. I agree. I think that's why she has his loyalty, because she is basically a mother figure to him. Some more comments on the Ralph Starling spotlight comes from Monique. She says, funny that scene with the Colburns bust in and she's talking to Ralph. There's Sydney on the wall there. Also, I didn't notice that. I saw you write this comment. This was 5 days ago. I did see that comment and I didn't notice that. I mean, in hindsight, I can picture the scene and I can see him on the wall behind her when he comes in. And it's just so, these writers have missed some things here and there. They've missed some opportunities. They've screwed up on Lady Susan's name, which will be an endless source of funny to me. But they are very, very good at letting the background play a character in this show. And I think that's what they were doing there. I don't think it was an accident that Sydney was there. I think it was intentional. I think they were letting the background be part of the character, part of the scene. And I love that they do that with the show. Monique says on episode 92, where we're talking about Mrs. Wheatley, back then the head housekeeper normally used the title of Mrs. And she said, Renee commented, irrespective of her actual marital status, Mrs. was a mark of respect. Yes, it was. Again, a lot of my historical knowledge comes from I love history. I minored in that in college, but it wasn't a specific aspect of history. It wasn't a specific time period that I studied out. So what I know of history and what I know of these things is what I have learned through documentaries or through literary works or things of that nature. That's how I've learned a lot of the stuff I know. So I don't think I really realized that Mrs. was a mark of, obviously was a mark of respect, because that's the highest honor you can have as a woman, is to be a married woman, right? But I don't think I realized it transcended into the help. Yeah. So thank you for putting that out. I did not realize that. Get Out of the Woods says in the Mrs. Wheatley episode, she says, Mrs. W is one of my favorite characters. She mastered the balance between being an employee and being a caring family friend. Wholeheartedly agree. She saw Xander and Charlotte kissing. She refused to confirm Augustus' suspicions of a relationship. Yeah, she protected him because she was his mother figure. He was as good as a son to her. She knew when to volunteer advice and when it was okay to call her employer by his first name. Exactly. And I think because she absolutely respected Xander, she absolutely respected who he was as a man, who he was as an employer, who he was as the head of that household. She respected all of those titles that he held, but she also loved him as a son, as someone familial. She loved him in that way. So she could very easily go in and out of those titles in order to find the right balance and to use it to how she needed to use it. Moving on to another comment on the Ralph Starling spotlight was KWN. Now, some of these that are in big paragraphs, I'm going to try to summarize. So you'll see you might see some editing where there's a transition that looks like, ooh, she skipped over some things there. It's because in editing, I'm deciding what to cut out. And so I can just summarize. I'm reading these for the first time as I'm on here. So I'm not pre-prepared with these comments. I wanted to answer them honestly and authentically. So she says she doesn't hate Ralph, but she really doesn't like him. And it's nothing to do with Colburn. It's his way of phrasing certain things that make me believe there is more to him than a seemingly innocent farm boy persona. And I get that he was out of his waters and that he might have had something to do with his approach to things, but still, I think I know where you're going with this. But I don't think they make me like him any less. They make me have more sympathy for him. She said Charlotte is supposedly the woman he loves, and instead of trying to get to know the side of her he didn't see before, he's trying to make sure she's removed from Sanditon, and it is never brought up again by constantly keeping her feet on the ground, Charlotte's words. And of course, there is aren't you glad I saved you from the life of a governess? Someone take Lennox's spirit out of Ralph, please. I do not agree with that at all. I think Lennox is someone who is overpowering to get whatever he thinks he deserves or wants, and it should be acceptable because he knows what he wants and he should just be allowed to get it because he's paid his dues, he's done his time. I don't think that's Ralph. I think Ralph has known this girl for decades, right? Or almost a decade. I mean, almost multiple decades, because we don't know if maybe he met her when she was 5, 6. We don't know, but their families have been connected for decades, right? So he has known this girl to be this one thing. He's seen her as this one thing: quiet, kind, obedient, intelligent, helpful, all these things. Not that she's different there, but that she is in a position to experience more, and she's in a position to be thrown into much more hazardous positions than she was before. And I think his desire, as loving who she is in Willingdon, is to save her from these hard and dangerous positions, whether it's dangerous to her respectability, whether it's danger to her person physically, whether it's a danger to her mentally. I think his goal there is, oh, she can't possibly like this. This is not, Willingdon is safe. This is not safe. I have to save her from this. And what these people are putting her through, I have to save her. So I think it was out of a place of love, but it was misplaced because he doesn't actually love who she is. He loved who he thought she was, because even in Willingdon, she wanted more. She's always wanted more. That's why she was so fascinated by Sanditon in season 1, because she wanted and craved more. She wanted more travel. She wanted more experience. She wanted more of the world. But she was so respectful and kind in Willingdon and to her parents and to her family that she would have never been upset or unhappy without that. But now that she's experienced it, she can't let it go. So he has seen her alter from who she was before going to Sanditon, coming back brokenhearted from Sydney. And in addition to being brokenhearted from Sydney, she's discontent in her life in Willingdon because she has now experienced something and believes she could never have it back. So she's discontent now where she wasn't before. So he blames it all on Sanditon. I don't think it's Lennox coming on him. I think he thinks he has to protect her from this because this place is harming her. I really do think that's what it is. And then she goes on to say in episode 4, when he speaks to Colburn on behalf, saying how ill we fit amongst such company. And again, I think he's obviously he's talking more about himself there, but he thinks as she's agreed to marry him, that she must be of the same mind as him, neglecting to think of her as a separate person, but already thinking of her as part of him. So she must feel what I'm feeling, which is annoying for sure. She says, what is he trying to prove? He's the one who's engaged to her, and yet his insecurity is so apparent that turns into possessiveness, and that's scary in any relationship. The possessiveness, as I said in this episode, those are the instances where I had an issue with Ralph. When I was like, oh, when he gave her the book and I was like, don't make me like this guy. But then he came and he said, I've come to take you home. Whoa, hold on there, mister. So, there are things where he comes out as possessive, but again, I think it's from a place of desperately trying to protect her. I think he thinks she's in real danger and she just must not realize it. So he has to save her from this. And I have to believe that part of him going there, it wasn't just him on his own. I think he's probably talking with her family too. And her father might have encouraged, obviously that's complete conjecture, but I think her dad might have encouraged him to go and return her. If you want to marry her, you're going to have to get her out of that place. If you want to have her, you're going to have to go and get her, kind of thing. Because he knows his daughter. So I think that there's some things behind the scenes that maybe we're not experiencing with Ralph, or we're not seeing with Ralph, that caused him to go and do this and give him the confidence to go and say these things to Charlotte. Because when we first meet him, he's too meek and quiet and reserved to really be possessive. But I also think the other aspect there is the more he sees her there, the more he gets confused about himself. Like, am I protecting her or am I trying to win her? And I think that he gets caught up in that. And I think that's where his insecurity seeps in, because he's realizing that he's trying to fight for her approval. He's trying to fight for her to choose him. And I don't think he thought he had to fight before, until he came to Sanditon with her. And then he realized that he was not just there to accompany her, that he was going to have to court her against this town. It wasn't just like there was another man. I don't even think he was jealous of Colburn at first. I think he was jealous of Sanditon. I think he could see how much she liked it there, how much she desired the things there, how much she desired that lifestyle there, and how much he hated it. So I think he always felt this competition with the town. She said, having said that, he eventually realizes and releases her from engagement. So no, I cannot hate him. In the end, he did the right thing. I agree, because I think he realized ultimately, this is not who I would thought I was marrying. And because he is a decent person, you would be miserable with me. And I think he came to that realization that she would be miserable with him. And honestly, he would be miserable with her because he didn't want what she wanted either. So he would have been stuck with a wife who was miserable, who made him miserable, and it would just be awful. So I think that you're right. He did do the right thing in the end. And I think he did realize it. And I think it took Mrs. Montrose's comment actually to kind of make him realize it, which I don't think that was her intention. Mo Power says on the Mrs. Wheatley episode, Mrs. W was at the back of the wedding in another Sanditon Facebook group. This is pointed out and a picture shown. Yeah, we did realize it. That did I not leave that in there? I thought I did, because Janice and I, we were discussing that. There's a bunch of that I cut out from our recording, but we were watching it as we were discussing it. If you watch it closely, you can see Janice looking up. She's watching the scene. So we realized that we could see Mrs. Wheatley's hat in the wedding, and that we saw her in the breakfast. Mo also said in the Mrs. Wheatley episode, not only the master-slave relationship of Georgiana's parents, as you mentioned, more telling and cruel is G's father selling her mother when G was only 6 months old. I think Mrs. Wheatley said that what she said as she understood the cruelty to this action. Yes. And that was the point that Janice and I were upset we didn't bring up in this, because we did bring that up in the first recording. We think maybe we didn't, but we remember discussing that. It doesn't mean anything though. But yes, that's completely accurate. I mean, Mrs. Wheatley might have grown up in a household where the parents loved each other and they were free because they were in England. You can't tell me that she doesn't understand the plight of a slave and losing your family, losing your parents, losing your siblings, losing your significant other. People were ripped apart crudely and horribly. So I think that she would have understood that, at least on some level. She understood that. Mrs. Wheatley says, or on Stephanie on the episode of Mrs. Wheatley says she was at the wedding party and Charlotte saw her before joining Xander. Yep, we did. I thought we pointed that out in that episode near the end. I'm not sure though. Maybe I didn't. Mrs. Wheatley, that episode again. Susan says, my favorite scene is the bet. Great to see you back. Susan, we love talking with you. We're thankful that you are commenting on our channel still and still with us after all these, just over 2 years, 2.5 years? I have to do quick math here, which is an oxymoron for me. It's the 10th month. So yeah, 2.5 years. So you've been with us for 2.5 years. I agree that bet was a pretty great scene. It showed such a playful side of Xander. And I think that's what we were longing to see in Charlotte's significant other, because we saw Sydney wasn't necessarily playful, but he was sarcastic. So we kind of got that bite to him. And I think Charlotte needs someone who's playful. And so it's nice. Kim said on the Ralph Starling episode, welcome back, ladies. I missed you. I never really wanted to think of Ralph as a person for Charlotte. He knew her family, but never knew her to be a forever for her. Kim, you are another one who's been with us since, I'm pretty certain since the beginning you've been with us. So thank you for continuing to cheer us on and being our cheerleader here. But I agree. I didn't want to like Ralph. They made me, what my fear was in liking Ralph was that they were going to make me like him to the point that I would be upset that she hurt him when she left him. But it didn't end up that way. He broke it off and it was the right thing for both of them. And we knew that going into that was going to be the right thing for both of them. But I like how they ended it, because I wasn't sad for Ralph like I was worried I was going to be. But I also wasn't angry with him for sticking out with her the way he tried to. So I think they did that perfectly. And you're right. He knew her family and he knew who she was with her family. But that was only one aspect of Charlotte. And Charlotte is a multifaceted character. And I think Ralph, I would hate to call him one note, but I think he's kind of that way. Mo Power says in the Ralph Starling spotlight, I never witnessed any real affection between Ralph and Charlotte. No, I don't think so. I think Ralph, I would equate it to more than a crush, but I think he saw her as someone who would match him well. And again, a lot of relationships were like that then. They were business deals, or they were, you would fit my needs, so let's get married, So I agree. I didn't see any real affection. And that's not what we want from a Jane Austen heroine. I don't consider the book nor the letter, just their interaction, and there was never the stolen kiss between them. Correct. And I think that was deliberate. Obviously, they wrote it that way, so it was deliberate. But I think the reason behind it was because it would show Charlotte's real affection. I don't think Charlotte would allow anybody that liberty unless she felt a passion she could not contain. And I don't think it's just like lust passion. I think it's love passion. And that's why we saw her kiss Sydney. That's why we see her allow Sydney to kiss her, and we see her kissing Colburn those four times, right? It's 4 times, yeah, twice in season 2, twice in season 3 before the wedding. So I think that's deliberate in that way. Jersey Girl says on the Samuel Colburn episode, ladies, I happened on to your YouTube channel by accident. I enjoyed your discussion and wanted to know if I'm the only one who hated the very ending after the wedding. I dislike the fact that 21st century wokeness was inserted into the storyline heavily at the end. I would have preferred a view of a typical day at Hayrick Park since Charlotte has become wife and mother. Well, that's just my opinion, of course. I felt the ending was flimsy and stupid. How many women are engaged in discussion of women's rights in the early 1820s? I think that was something they were trying to point out. And that's something that I would like to ask Paula Byrne when she comes back on here, because they did insert some modern themes in there, but I don't think it's so far removed from that time period. I think while it was not the norm at all, obviously was not the norm, I do think those movements moved up, because I kind of thought that when I was watching season 1 and there were, because Georgiana was a Black heiress, right? So I kind of thought, would this really work this way? Is this, and I had to educate myself on the slave system of that time period. And actually it's heavily due to a lot of you who have helped to educate me in what slavery looked like in England, what slavery looked like when you crossed over to England. So thank you for that. But I kind of felt the same way too. I do think that there were a lot of modern themes in here that were a little too modern for this time period. But I do think that there were not very many women discussing women's rights in the early 1820s. But I do think that it was a discussion to women like Charlotte, though, to women like Georgiana. I mean, she started the boycott with the slave trade, which that was not rampant, right? What Georgiana was doing, not only as a Black woman, but as a woman, that was not common. But it does not mean it never happened. It happened to women like Georgiana, like Charlotte, who genuinely cared about these things. There were women who genuinely cared. I know that, what was her last name was Astor. She was a woman who worked heavily in the early 1900s with women in voting in England. And she fought to get some seat on, I don't know if it was a city council or something like that, but that was the early 1900s. And it had been long talked about before she got that. I don't remember her first name, but her last name was Astor. And she had married, and she was part of this family from the US, but still she fought that. So I think that while it was not common, it did happen to women like Charlotte and Georgiana who were passionate about the plight of people who were hurting. And I think that was one of the reasons that they allowed it to come in there, because Georgiana had the plight of the slaves, right? She had the plight of those people who were suffering under the sugar trade and things like that. And her now husband has connections to the Sons of Africa. So there's these aspects of the plight of a human being that I think would have called to Charlotte, and I think she would have gone in there. Now, the one thing I love that she was a teacher in the end. I do. I think it's a cool twist. I think it would fit her. However, I don't think that would have been as widely accepted as they made it seem, that she was a married woman, a mother who was out working when her husband was a wealthy landowner. I don't think that would have been as accepted as they made it seem. I think that Charlotte may not have wanted to do that as a young, it would be different if she had kids who were in the schoolhouse with her, but she had a baby at home. And I don't think that would fit Charlotte's personality personally. And I don't think it would have been as widely accepted as they made it seem in the ending. But that's just my opinion. I do think that it's good that she's helping. It's not so much of a job for her either. And I think part of the reason it might have fallen flat is because so little time was spent on it that we're lacking a lot of information. I don't think it was a job she got paid for. I think it was almost like wealthy landowners, the wives would go to the tenants' houses, right? And they would bring them baskets of food or baskets of clothing or baskets of needs. I think this was kind of Charlotte's thing for that. She was filling a need as a landowner, as someone invested in Sanditon, as someone who is there, who has wealth and can give back. I think that's more likely what it was, but it did seem a little weird for Alexander to be picking her up with the baby at the end. And I think they were trying to highlight that they aren't your average couple, that they are ahead of their time but I think that could be why I fell a little flat. So I do agree with some of your points, and I disagree with some of them. I don't. There was some wokeness throughout the storyline that I wish they wouldn't have hit so heavy-handedly, because I don't think it was realistic, and that was a little bit of it. But I think it was because they didn't give themselves more time, more episodes to discuss it. But we are glad you are here, Jersey Girl. Ooh, 2 weeks ago we got a comment from our Sanditon season 2 episode 5 recap from Pirate Frenchie. She said, Maureen, totally off topic, but I've been searching for a radiator top cover like yours. I don't think I have that radiator top cover anymore. If you're talking about this guy, there is no cover on it. We got rid of that this used to be in my daughter's bedroom, and she wanted to go upstairs instead of be downstairs by herself. So I took it over as a podcasting room. So there's no radiator cover on there right now. I did have just a black piece of plywood on there to hold my signs up there, but that was it. So, and the radiator cover that was on there, if that's the one you're talking about, came with our house. So I don't know where it came from. Sorry about that, but thank you for the compliment. You also say within that episode, can't believe it took an hour before you spoke of Coburn's entrance to the ball, literally the most pivotal scene of the entire series. Well, when Janice and I record these together and we're doing recaps, we often recap from start to finish. So we try to, and Janice is the one because for me, okay, I have children, I have young kids. So whenever I hear For Me, I think of that song, It's Corn. I don't know if you guys think that, but that goes in my head every time I hear For Me. But I tend to hear somebody say something and then it'll spark a thought, and I'll say it, even if it's not in order, even if it's far down the road, I will say that thought because I need to get it out. When I went through my cancer treatments, it kind of eliminated my short-term memory in a really irritating way. And it's kind of messed with, I always say that my currency is speech, and I talk a lot, and I podcast. So I kind of need these thoughts and these speeches or the talking ability. So when that came in, I don't remember a lot of things. So when I have a thought, it comes out of my mouth, even if it's not in line with what we're talking about. So I don't know if you've noticed a change in how we podcast on here since I got diagnosed in 2021, but there's a little bit of a change. But Janice is the one who, when we do the recaps, she'll keep us on point going from beginning of the episode to the end of the episode. And we each usually have a script pulled up so we can reference that. And so that's why it took us that long to talk about the pivotal ball scene. So you're right. It was fantastic. It was great. It was an emotional scene. It was fantastic. And I'm realizing as I'm saying it that although in my head, I thought I was talking about the season 3 scene where he came into the ballroom, season 2, I have the same feelings about. So, we got a comment on our episode 63, which is Colonel Lennox character spotlight. That was 2 weeks ago. It's just a user BH8 says, my opinion is that Lennox is not so bad. I don't know how I feel about that. We must think like people in that century. He is noble. Colonel, he loves Charlotte. Oh, I don't agree with that at all. I don't think he loves Charlotte. I think he is interested in her. I think he thinks that she would be amusing as a wife. I think he thinks she will keep him on his toes and entertained. I don't think he feels love for her at all. He's very respectful. Completely disagree with that. He starts off a little disrespectful, but he is constantly playing a game. That's throughout the entire show. He does it with Tom too. He's constantly playing a game to see where he can get his advantage and see how he can succeed. He's a military man through and through. So that's everything to him. He sees in that way. And Charlotte is no different. He sees her as something to be conquered. And so when he's looking at her, he's looking for his advantages. So I don't think he's respectful. Certainly not in the end when they're talking in the balcony and he accuses her of leading him on essentially. And he's attacking her almost. It's Colburn who comes up and is like, what is happening here? But it's because Lennox is not being respectful. He's being unkind and he's being brutish and he's trying to bully her. He's well educated. I will give him that. He's well educated. He is ready to quit his job for Charlotte. No, I think that it has nothing to do with Charlotte. I think that being a military man is exhausting and having that be your entire life is a lot. And I don't think he would have ever really given it up in full. I think he would have married her. They would have moved to where he wanted to move them to, which again, where he wanted to move them to, it would have been all his way. Charlotte would not have gotten a say because I don't think he would have respected her in that way in their relationship. And I think he would have continued to do what he does because he's not a man who can be still. I believe that he loved Lucy. He was young. She says Lucy was abandoned by her husband. He was not. I don't agree that she was abandoned by him. I think they were both highly immature, way too young, wanted very different things. And I think she ran from him because she didn't want what he wanted. She wanted the frivolity. She wanted the lights and the action of London. He was just inherited his home. He wanted to stay in the countryside. He's an introvert. He wanted to maintain that. And not that her side is wrong. It's not wrong to want the lights of London. It's not wrong to want the parties and the balls and the social life. That's not wrong. But neither is what Colburn wanted wrong. They were two very different people who had no business being married, is what I think. So I do not think she was abandoned by him. He did say that he holds himself responsible. Yes, 100%. He did leave her there, but she also refused to come back. So we could look at it and say, well, he left her there. Well, she also was, they were both trying to force the other to do something they wanted them to do, but the other didn't want to do. That's not good from either position. So I don't think the blame should be all on him. She, however, is the one who broke the marriage vow. She willingly did that. That is solely on her. There's no way you can sugarcoat that. She did that. Could Lennox have smooth talked her? Absolutely, but she still did it. I do think that Lennox had some sort of feeling for her. I don't think it's love. Again, he was young. I think that she was a pretty girl who he saw was lonely, and I think he enjoyed her. She said, Colburn is rude and pushed Lucy to suicide. Oh, I don't agree with that at all. In fact, did she didn't commit suicide. I don't think that was said in there. She died after she got sick, right? She went out maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I thought they said that she went out. I think she wanted to die. I think he was alluding to, but that could also be because of the shame of having an affair and getting pregnant with another man's baby. So at that time period, that was a bigger no-no than it is today. Like that was social suicide, and that's what she wanted, was a social life. So I think Colburn was honorable in that situation. I don't think he pushed her to suicide. I think that she wanted to. If she did, I think she might have gone out there knowing that she would get sick and something could happen to her, but I don't think she actually killed herself. She said, I believe that Lennox did not know that Lucy was pregnant. I don't think he did either. He's a gentleman. He slept with a married woman. So I think the term gentleman, as it applies to Regency, doesn't apply to Lennox. She said, I recommend seeing the film The Duchess. That's actually on my list to see. I don't like Colburn. I can see that. She says he's egocentric, arrogant, and rude. He plays the victim. He does not play the victim. He thinks he is the villain until Charlotte comes along and helps him see that he's not the villain, but he paints himself as the villain. He does through all of season 2. And in season 3, he doesn't see himself as the villain anymore, but he also doesn't see himself as a victim. I don't think he ever sees himself as a victim. I think he hates Lennox because of what Lennox did with Lucy. But I think he's well within his rights to hate the man who had an affair with his wife. And I mean, she died as a direct result of getting pregnant, no matter how you shake it. So I think he had every right to be angry with him. I don't think he's egocentric. I think he does not like himself very much because he, again, saw himself as a villain. He's not arrogant at all. I don't think at all. And I don't think he was a little rude. But so was Sydney when we first met him. It takes love to soften that. He was a man who he lived in a tomb for years because he hated himself. He blamed himself. He villainized himself. So he was rude, and it took softening from someone loving him where he's at to not beat that out of him, but to get rid of the rudeness. And so I think but thank you for commenting on that. I like having the different perspective because I know not everybody agrees with what I say. And that's as it should be. Not everyone should agree with me. I mean, I think I'm right, but nobody has to always agree that I'm right. Season 2, episode 1 recap. Woo! We got another comment from way back. That's episode 46. By the way, we are approaching our 100th episode. So we want to do something special for that. I don't know what we're going to do special though, but we are almost to our 100th episode, guys. This is a labor of love for us. So this is from Get Out of the Woods. She says, first, I love this. I'm so grateful for all the hard work you all have done. Thank you so much. Thank you. And you said, it's nice to know others are watching this as closely as I did. Yes, you are in good community. I don't want to keep calling you Get Out of the Woods, but I don't know what your name is, but you are in good community here with the Sanditon group. She said, what hit me the most at the beginning of this episode was, who was Allison? Yeah, they did change. that was something I think that we commented on in this video, was they did change the actress. Actually, I think we talked about it. If you go back to our videos when we were before season 2 and before season 3, I think we did some episodes where we talked about what's coming up in the season and what we were getting as sneak peeks and casting announcements, that sort of thing. So if you go back, you'll see that that was one thing that we were like, really, they really made it someone different. But we have to give them grace because it was 2 years in between the series, in between season 1 and season 2. It was canceled, so actors had moved on. The actor who played Allison, I don't even think she had a single line in season 1. We saw her for 5 minutes, if that. So I think it was completely normal to move on. It was a little weird that they went with a blonde actress, but I love that actress, so I was satisfied with it. You were questioning who Charlotte was because her hair was so light, long, and all over the place. Actually, I talked to Paula Byrne about that after season 1. She was, if you don't know who Paula Byrne is, we did an interview with her. So go ahead and check that out. It was within our first 10 episodes. I think we did an episode with Paula Byrne. And I had asked her about the hair because my thought was women had their hair up unless they were with family or in the countryside. In the countryside, it was more common to have loose hair but if you were in society, in polite society, you would have your hair up. And that was the norm. But they said that the leaving the hair down was intentional, that it was to depict Charlotte's personality and help to give viewers an idea of who she was and that she was not your typical heroine. Check that interview out. She says it way more beautifully than I do. But Paula Byrne, if you guys listening don't know, she was the literary advisor throughout all 3 seasons of Sanditon. And she was very popular on Twitter. It still is. Well, I guess it's X now. But she has a presence on there. She's an amazing woman. She has stood by this fandom so sweetly and so kindly and so steadfastly. And she has given us information. She has fought for us. She's awesome. So check her out. She's got a couple books out on Jane Austen too. Check those out. They're really, really good. I've got a couple of them. Then who was the lady in black? That would be the widow, right? Eliza hated Charlotte. So that didn't make sense. Would Mary travel to Willingdon to tell an ex-girlfriend about Sydney's death? Okay, so the woman in black in season 2, episode 1, that was Mary because her brother-in-law had just died. So she was also in mourning. So she went to Charlotte in black. That was Mary. I believe that's who you're talking about there. She would, because Charlotte was more part of their family by the end of season 1. Charlotte had become important to them and valuable to them, and she meant something deeply to them. And on the other side, Mary knew, while Tom did not, Mary knew that Sydney was going to propose to Charlotte. And she could tell that when in season 1, when Mary sent them off to go on the walk, it was because she knew. And Charlotte and her were even talking before the final ball in season 1 that broke all of our hearts. She knew that they were going to that the plan was for them to get engaged because they were talking about it. Mary and Charlotte were before the ball. And she said, Tom proposed to me at a ball too. So she knew how much love Charlotte had for Sydney. And she knew why Sydney married Eliza. It was simply to save the family. She knew that Sydney loved Charlotte as much as Charlotte loved Sydney. And the only reason he did not marry her was to save Tom and Mary. So Mary felt that she owed it to Charlotte to tell her, but B, Charlotte deserved to know because Charlotte truly, truly loved Sydney and Sydney truly, truly loved Charlotte. That's why she went. She said, so I'm trying to grieve to Sydney's death and figure out who everyone else really was. Maybe my tears didn't let me see everyone's facial features. I do wish there was a way to keep Sydney because, well, I love Colburn with her now. I think that they're a good match. I think that they are, but he wasn't who it was supposed to be. Let's just be real honest. He was not who it was supposed to be. It's not even who the writers wanted it to be. However, the writers did a fantastic job making Colburn up to snuff. So I agree with that. I love Sydney's funeral procession. The colors and the music were perfect. Yep. I think it was necessary to see his body go on the ground so that there was no possibility that maybe he was lost to sea, but alive on a deserted island or something. Wholeheartedly agree with you. And honestly, I think that is literally the only reason they showed his coffin being put in the ground. Because the Sidlot fans would have taken that, not seeing that as, nope, he's alive. He's alive somewhere. He's going to come back. There's not a chance they would have let that die. So you're absolutely right. There's just no way. I also reminded myself often that given his popularity at the boarding house, he was likely to cheat on Charlotte. I don't think he would have. I think he was, well, I don't like the boarding house thing. Well, I don't like the promiscuity. I think that was because he was not married. I think he loved Charlotte enough to give all that up for her. And he would have had Charlotte to fill those needs. So he wouldn't have needed a boarding house. Not that he would have needed anyway. I mean, people every day go without it. So I think so. I'm getting into weird territory there, and I'm going to stop. Makes me uncomfortable. She said they would have had a lot of passion and a lot of arguments. Yes, they would have. But here's I listened to this really good. It was before I got married. It was I've listened to Christian music and Christian radio since I was quick math 18. So there is often pastors who will come on there and talk. And he had said there was a therapist who was on this channel that I listened to, and he had said that if a couple comes to me and says, we don't know what's wrong, we don't even fight. And he said, well, then that's the problem, because then you're not talking. So I think it's healthy to have arguments. And I think that their passion would have let it be that the arguments didn't kill their relationship, because they loved each other in such a good way. She says, men with no shirts on. I'm glad there was less nudity in season 2 than season 1. I agree with you completely. I don't. And this is what I'm reading, what you go on to say. And this was something that Janice and I also talked about, that this would not have happened that way. She says, I like watching Austin adaptations with my daughter. Same, except for Mansfield Park. I tried watching that with my daughter. I'm like, oh my gosh, can't watch that with my daughter. She said season 1 was too spicy for that. I don't think Lockhart nor Colonel Lennox's shirtlessness would have been tolerable during the Regency era. I agree. And I don't think the girls would have gone through the camp in that way. And Janice and I talked about that in our recaps in season 2. That irritated both of us. At a minimum, the ladies would have turned away. Yes. Except for those who were saucy. Those ladies wouldn't have. But I agree. I don't think that was a realistic scene at all. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone who knows far more about history than I do can come back and say, you're being dumb. I don't know, but that doesn't feel real to me. We have a comment from 2 weeks ago on season 3, episode 1 recap. She said the blue dress is a darker shade of blue than in the first series. She obviously liked blue. That's from Carol in the UK. Yep. I think that blue signifies emotion. A lot of times it can signify a sadder feel. It can signify someone who is more passionate, kind of like emotional in that way. Not passionate, but emotional. And there's other things blue can signify, but I think that's why they picked that color palette for her. The Colonel Lennox spotlight, Pirate Frenchie says on this one, how do you access the script? If you just look into Google and you look up Sanditon season whatever, episode whatever script, they'll pull some up. Some of them, though, they don't have the names of the people who are speaking, so you just have to know the show well enough to know who's speaking when. She said also, why was Lennox so hateful towards Alexander Colburn? Alexander Colburn is the wrong person, in my opinion. He was, yes, but I think Lennox was also told by Lucy, as their relationship got more and more close, that she was angry at Alexander. And I think she did not hold back in how she spoke about him to Lennox. And I think Lennox kind of saw him as a weaker man. And I think that Lennox has no patience for men who are weak. And I think he thought Colburn was weak. And so he did not like him. And I think that's why. And I think it was that he bested him, he felt, in getting his wife. And so it was kind of a source of, he wanted to poke the bear because he could, because he felt he was the superior man. I think that's what it was. Get Out of the Woods says on the Sanditon season 2 finale recap, I wondered if the reason Sydney always won was because his cards were marked. I don't think so. I think Sydney was just, if you watch him on there, I think he just studied people well. And I think he had pretty good instincts. But I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they were marked. I don't think they were, though. Season 2, episode 5 recap. Get Out of the Woods also says, having seen season 3, this was still my favorite episode. The richness of all the characters seemed to shine. This was the ball scene. Episode 5 recap, season 2. This is the ball scene when Allison went up to Carter and said her piece to him in that scene. I don't think I would say this is my favorite episode across all 3 seasons. I think that would likely go to either the gold ball of season 1. My favorite episodes are going to be season 1. Either the gold ball of season 1, or it would be episode 8 of season 1. Those are my favorite episodes, I think. Although I loved all of them. Me saying those are my favorite does not mean I don't like these ones. It's just, those are my preferred. But that's also, season 1 is one I binged watched on repeat over, and like I would finish episode 8 and within a minute have started over on episode 1. And I did that a long time because of how it ended. It was so traumatic to me and I found out that it was canceled within a couple of weeks of it ending, that I was like, no, I can't stop. So I've watched that season more than I'm more familiar with that season I'm more familiar with that season than I am with season 2 or 3. So that's why. On the character spotlight for Raleigh Price. Okay, there's on episode 90, we were talking the Raleigh Price character spotlight, and Jay says Lady D was happy at the garden party when she saw the cake. She's ready to go into a diabetic coma. Accurate. She was very proud of her cake. Even before the cake came out, she was very proud of that cake. Okay, here's another one from Jay. It's from our the Montrose family episode. She said, although interesting, Montrose gang were not needed. I agree. I think that they probably they did provide something. I think that they were trying to tie up loose ends in every character. I think that obviously Harry was for Arthur's benefit. I think Lydia was for Colburn and Charlotte's benefit to cause that friction there. And I think Lady Montrose was also the one who she made it so that Ralph understood that Charlotte was not meant to be with him. And also she played a role in, well, obviously Georgiana's relationship. So I think that's why they added them. I do think that there are other ways they could have solved it without adding those 3 new characters, but I did like them enough that I'm not mad at it. The purpose of season 3 was 1. The purpose of season 3 was 1, Georgiana to find her mother. 2, Charlotte and Alexander to come to their senses. And 3, for Edward to get destroyed, which did not happen, by the way. Was anybody else dissatisfied with what happened with Edward? Unfortunately, the 3rd season failed because all the extra unnecessary fluff. Everything was rushed and disjointed. They had a full year to get this right. The editing failed miserably. This is one case where less is more. I don't think they had a full year to get it right. I think that when we started reaching out to people about coming on to be interviewed by us, it was shortly after we started our podcast. So I think it was, I started reaching out to people in March of 2021, March of 2021. I think I started this podcast. It had to be, yeah, because that was 2 years ago, March of 2021. And when we started reaching out to them towards June, people had started hinting that there was a season coming up that they couldn't speak to us about. So they started filming in September of 2021, I think August or September of 2021. And they filmed season 2 and 3 back to back because the actors who came back, they still had other obligations to film for other things. So I don't think they had a full year to get it right. I think that they had been working on the rewrite or the script writing, but I believe that they had one written for Theo coming back, and then they had to scratch that and create something wholly new when they realized Theo couldn't or wouldn't come back. So I think they started writing, my understanding, and this is just from bits and pieces I've gathered, my understanding is that they were still trying to get him in March or April of 2021. They were still trying to get Theo to come back. So I think that the rewrite happened relatively quick to get us what we wanted. And then filming started September 2021. And then season 2 came out in March of 2022. And then season 3 came out in March. Now, while there's a year in between there, they had already filmed all the stuff and they had already written all the stuff. And so the only reason there was a year between there is because that's how TV works. You can't put out 2 seasons back to back. So I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think that they got this out very quickly for us, and they did what they could with it, and they had to ascend. I think the reason why they did add those people as well, the Montroses, is because they essentially were creating a whole new show without Theo because they had to completely go a different direction. So I think that's why. And the Montrose, Karen said we needed less Raleigh Price and more other backstory like Lydia. And Jay said I could not agree more. I think that we needed more. We got more of Lady D from Raleigh though. So I do think his character, if there was another way they could have let us into Lady D and her backstory, let's go there. But Raleigh was who brought that up. So I think each new character, though it may have seemed like filler or fodder, was necessary to bring something else to the characters that we loved already. Also within that, Karen said Lady Lydia worked with Ben before, another period piece. I did not know that. But I always think it's funny that Ben worked with Theo before. That always makes me laugh. Denise, our pal Denise, says on the Montrose family. She's got a couple of them on the Montrose family, so I'm just going to read her. I think I've got 4 pulled up in front of me here. She says the Montrose family dynamic is definitely one of those things I would like to have seen more of if we could have had the 8-episode season. I do think, now here's the thing. I think we could have done without them if we focused more on other people. But again, like I said, I think each of these characters that were added they put in there to give us the backstory we wanted on the other people. It's how they moved the storylines along. So it might have seemed filler, but it was necessary. That being said, I do think that if you're going to add these people, I did not like that it was just hinted at about Lydia's past. I wanted to know what was really there. I wanted to care more about these characters. So I was kind of sad I didn't get more of that. She also says, I wonder if Lydia's comment about building the chapel is an attempt to push Colburn towards Charlotte. I think she was just being snarky. I don't even think that she fully realized the extent of how Charlotte and Colburn felt about each other. I think she was just trying to be, I think she liked pulling one over on her mom in public without her mom knowing it. Up until the last episode, Lydia may be aware of her feelings between Colburn and Charlotte, but she also knows that Charlotte is engaged to Ralph. I think that I don't think that entered her head into the last couple of episodes, and that I think that's off screen. We're seeing that we aren't seeing her and Colburn talk about that. She also says, I often wonder if in the episode where Lydia says she has an appointment to go riding, that it's not with Colburn, but with her soon-to-be fiance. Timing works for engagement, and she previously had a conversation with Colburn. I think that's very possible. It would explain how Colburn knows about the situation, how Lydia came to be recently engaged. I think so too. And I do think that she was writing regularly with this other guy. I do think that was a regular occurrence. She also goes on to say, Lady Montrose makes one wonder how Harry and Lydia turned out to be the decent human beings that they are. And, maybe the mom wasn't always like that. Maybe she became this person more fully. Obviously, she's always had the capability if she's like this now, but maybe she became more fully like that after her husband lost all their money, Reno says on this same episode, so if Colburn was in Bath, how did he not cross paths there with Montrose's family? Augusta remarked AC and her attended many balls in Bath. Maybe they didn't run in the same circles. Maybe the Montroses were trying to hide a little bit. Maybe the Montroses came to Sanditon because they were watching Colburn in Bath and saw he has money. We should follow where he goes. That's possible too. I think that's part of the reason why they came there, because otherwise it seemed a little too coincidental that they ended up where Colburn was when they just came from where Colburn was. Jay says, oh, it's easy. Bath is a busy place. Reasonable they didn't cross paths. Reno also commented on our episode with Paula Byrne. She said, this popped up in my YouTube listing. Great interview. Just ordered Paula's books from the library. Oh, good. Let me know how you like them. I have a couple of hers and I really, really enjoyed them. Now, this one from Catherine, I did already respond to on YouTube, but I just wanted to say it because this is something that she pointed out. This is on the relationships of Samuel Colburn. She says, it's another rich discussion on her favorite character in season 3. I imagine that Lady Susan and Samuel will not marry, interestingly enough, but will love one another and honor, respect, be true to one another for the remaining days. Not quite what Lady D and Mr. Price have decided for themselves, but likely one that doesn't require a marriage license to solidify their union. Not sure why I think that. I think that is an interesting concept. I think that could work. I think that what they might do actually is I think they might go to a little, I don't even think they would invite Alexander and Charlotte, but I think that they would want to live together rightly and legally. And so I think that they would do a little something like that with just the two of them and a priest or something. As you mentioned, what struck me as some of the loveliest elements of their relationship are how it was grounded in friendship and a shared desire to see others whom they love coming together, and how much joy and laughter they bring to one another, kindred spirits. There are times when Samuel respects Lady Susan more than she seems to respect herself. I agree. Albeit as a woman with a title, but without wealth, her reliance on the king's favor is partly a matter of survival. Yes, it was. Yes. And I'm going to skip over the comments that I've responded to, except for that one, because I wanted to point out her thought there. But another one on the Samuel Colburn episode comes from Stephanie. She said, what I like about Samuel's character is that he allows us to discover a different, lighter Xander. I like their brotherly relationship, full of humor and teasing. I think they stuck together when they were young. I don't think their 10-year separation was the result of a major conflict. I think there was a major conflict in that Samuel rejected his inheritance and left. So Alexander had to pick it up, and he had to take over the home and the farm or the land and the manor. That's what I was looking for, was manor. Tonga says on the same episode, I've been waiting for your take on this character. He's one of my favorites for season 3. Hartwell says he's a good actor, very charming, and overall babe. I agree. On the episode where we talk about Agnes Harmon and everyone, KWN says, not a fully developed relationship. Watching Charlotte taking Agnes's hand on their first meeting and her genuine smile when she says, how do you do? Perfect depiction of both their characters. And just like you said, it shows how Agnes knows how to read people, and thus she recognizes kindness in Charlotte immediately. I agree. I think that's a really good thing to point out, is that one scene. It's a very good read on both of those characters. Reno says, I think this shows Charlotte's love for Georgiana, knowing how Georgiana longed to know more about her mother recently, finding out she's still alive. I agree with that too. And I think that's part of the reason why Agnes liked Charlotte so much, is because she could see that that's what it stemmed from, was that. And I think that I have replied to all the other comments that we've had since our last episode. Oh, I found one. This is from the Sanditon Ironies and Parallels in season 1 through 3. Jay says, one thing I did not hear you bring up is Lady Susan's past as a parallel to Augusta. Like Augusta, Lady Susan impulsively ran off, eloped with Sir Worcester. As very young, I got an impression it was not good or happy marriage. Lady Susan's concern for Augusta was genuine. When did we find out she ran off and eloped with Sir Worcester? Because I don't remember hearing that in season 1. But again, memory, not such a great old ticker up here anymore. Carol says on our season 5 recap from season 3, or episode 5 recap from season 3, she says, Falmouth is a port, so it's possible to go by sea up to the West Scotland. They carry passengers on trading vessels. And that's actually that's from Carol. So thank you for that bit of information. I think that Janice and I try to take this very, very literally instead of that, we sometimes forget Sanditon's not a real town. So also on our guest host talking Sanditon series, which we have with Denise. If you have not watched that episode, go and watch it. It's episode 82 where we had Denise on here and we just talked Sanditon, me, her, and Janice. Chris says, and the cornflower motif was in Charlotte's wedding dress, which I did not notice, but also I barely remember what the cornflower looks like. I can picture him handing it to her, but I barely remember what it looks like. So that's interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think that I have replied to all the other ones. So there are a couple other comments on here that happened from much older episodes, like episode 16. There's some on there, episode 77, episode 27, all of those. But we are not going to go into those because I think I think there was only like 4 of those, but I think I have talked a lot. I've talked for about an hour. So thank you guys for coming along with us and along with me and letting me read your comments. And thank you so much for interacting with us. Please keep commenting on our videos. We really, truly want to know what you think, even if it's completely opposite to us. Our only ask is that you're kind, but we love having people with different opinions. And again, if you would like to come on here and talk Sanditon or talk Jane Austen, please, please, please let us know. We had a blast with Denise. We'd love to have you guys on here. So let us know if that's something you're interested in. You can reach out to us at our email, which is the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. At the end of our episodes, we always have all of our socials listed there. We're trying to, again, as we restructure our podcast, we're trying to also restructure our intro so you have all that information right up front. So that's something you can do. I know I have not been very active. I say this every episode. I'm going to get back into it. But if I could tell you how insane it is in my house right now and how little time I actually have to do that, I would tell you how insane it is. But I don't have the words. So we are trying to get on there. I am sorry I'm not more active on there, but please continue to post things. Please continue to write your thoughts, your theories, send your YouTube videos, your fan fiction. If you have fan fiction you want us to read, reach out to us. Let us know. Janice and I will read it. We'll review it. Even if it's Sidlot, it doesn't matter. That's okay. We'll do that too. If you had a different ending, we'd love to hear that. You want have things. I think one episode we're going to do down the line is storylines we'd like to see happen from this and where we'd like to see them go. So if you have input on that, what you think, please let us know. Reach out to us. So next week you will be getting Edward and Augusta, as well as Fuchs and Beatrice. We're bringing those two to you. The week after that, which is the 29th, is going to be our members live, which everyone can listen to. It's just members chat will be on. No one else can chat unless you're a member of our channel, which is the $2.99 membership. We'll have that as well as our Pride and Prejudice 2005 version review for you. So that's coming for you end of October. After that, we're going to go back to 1 episode per week. And that's what's coming up for you. Let us know what you think, what your opinions are of what we've talked about here today, what you want to see coming up. We just want to hear from you. So on that note, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.